Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. My name is Dylan Collier, and today I am with Dr. Tori Heckendorn and Dr. Devin Riley. They are a PT couple, new grads, just graduated not too long ago. Can you tell us a little bit about your travel journey so far, kind of how you got started and where you guys are at right now?
Sure. We met in undergrad of college before PT school, but traveling was something we were both interested in. Devin was working for a year in outpatient before we started traveling. So in that time, while I was waiting to get my license process after taking the boards, is when I kind of started doing more of the legwork, talking to different companies, just trying to get a whole idea about the ins and outs of travel. So it was nice that I was not working at that time because I was able to devote, it was like a full-time job, just talking to these agencies and getting advice from other travelers. So our first job was we're from New Jersey, and our first job was in Arizona, northern Arizona, near Sedona, which was beautiful. We both worked in home care. We actually worked for the same company. We just had different territories that we covered out in Arizona. And then that's kind of what happened for us in Maine. We're in Maine right now.
Okay.
Also working in home care, and for one company, neighboring territory. So it was nice to find an agency that had the need for two people. That has been the biggest challenge that we faced so far, is aligning two contracts at the same time in a relatively nearby location. So having one company with two openings has seemed to work out well for us.
Got it. Very, very cool. How long have you guys been traveling so far?
We've been traveling since January of 2017, so
Okay.
we're still in our first full year of travel.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You said you were a home health PT. Was that your first choice, or was that just kind of the availability was pushing you guys that way since it was harder to find a job as a couple?
Home health wasn't our first choice. It wasn't something that we were opposed to. We kind of knew going into travel, based off of the different recruiters that we talked to, that you can't be as picky when you have two people. So we kind of explored all different kinds of settings that we could possibly end up in. So when we were offered home health jobs, it wasn't something that we were something we weren't ready to delve into. So we just made sure that we were promised some mentoring and training before because we had no experience in home health. And obviously when you get out in the field in home health, you're by yourself.
Got it.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Especially being a new grad, that was my first job, and never having a clinical in home health, it was definitely a little bit intimidating. However, now looking back, I'm really glad that we had accepted those opportunities, because now I'm about 10 months into working in home health and definitely feeling a lot more confident. And after working with two different documentation systems in home health, kind of learning two different models for home health, it's something that I'm glad that I kind of took a leap of faith on, because now I could definitely see myself working in home health, maybe not full time in the future, but per diem or part time. And I don't know if I would have done that if I had just come out of school and taken a job in a different setting. I don't know if I would have ever reached out to do home health. So that's one of my favorite parts of doing travel therapy. It really you have to take a step out of your comfort zone, and you really learn a lot, and you learn a lot pretty quickly.
So you mentioned that there's a little bit of mentorship going into that first home health as a new grad. And I've had several people kind of approach me that were in those exact same shoes, where they're kind of getting pushed to home health because there's more availability, but they've never had a clinical. Can you kind of talk about your experience with the mentorship and as a new grad going into home health?
Do you want honesty, or would you?
As honest as you guys want.
Yeah, I mean, so we did our research before committing to it, and we were promised mentoring. And my friend had also gone into home health with a different travel agency, so he mentioned that he had mentorship with a very positive experience. And I think he spent about 2 weeks out in the field with another therapist, which was about, that's quite a commitment I think from a company that's keeping you for only 13 weeks to guarantee something like that, which is pretty awesome. But in the end, you have to really, make sure you do your research, because we've had both positive and negative experiences with the mentorship, in that sometimes they try to, if they think you're doing well, they kind of convince you that it's time to, even if you don't necessarily feel comfortable, they convince you that you need to be out on your own a little quicker than you probably should. And you don't always get we haven't always gotten what was promised to us up front ahead of time with the length of the mentorship. But usually you go out in the field for a few weeks with an experienced home health physical therapist, and you kind of spend 1 or 2 days observing, and then transition into documentation while they kind of do the treats. And then slowly they, as they see new patients, they'll give you an evaluation, and then they'll sit down with you and make sure you're hitting all the important parts of the documentation. And then you'll get a couple of your own patients, and they'll just kind of start gearing towards you taking all the new patients and transitioning the other patients to you, just kind of overlooking your notes, and then kind of branching off on your own and just reaching out to them to, throughout your time there as a resource to help guide you where your questions are, which is definitely helpful. In my situation, it was an experienced therapist that had worked 30 years, but she was full-time with the company. So it was a little different that she had no travel experience, but I had a pretty positive experience. Tori was fortunate enough. I guess I'll let her kind of tell about her mentor at her first one, since she was the one.
My mentor, actually, it was funny because she worked for the same travel agency that we do. So that was a good learning experience, just in talking to her about her travel experience. Unfortunately, when I came in, she was on her way out, but she was very accessible, even though she had moved out of the state 2 weeks after I started. She was still made herself available to answer questions. And then we actually wound up mentoring 2 travelers who replaced us. So I kind of tried to make myself available to them to ask questions just about the documentation or just difficult situations. So I think it also, it takes into part, sometimes it's our responsibility as the therapist to go a little bit above and beyond just to help with the transition, because they were taking over my patients. So obviously I wanted my patients' transition to be as smooth as possible.
Right. Kind of that pay it forward mentality. I've heard documentation is pretty different in home health compared to other settings. Would you say that's the most difficult part of the home health setting, just being out as a new grad, or what would you say is the most difficult part?
I haven't felt the documentation to be as cumbersome as people kind of had labeled it. When I heard home health, I heard that was like the reason why you shouldn't do it, and kind of I haven't had that experience at all. With our first agency, with the first company we had worked for, the documentation was a little more monotonous. Let's put it that. There was a lot of overlap with the documenting, so it kind of got frustrating at times. But we had tablets, so we pretty quickly you could get very fast with it. This agency, the documenting is a little bit more user friendly, so it's been a little bit easier, I think, documenting here in a faster manner. The thing I'll say is the OASIS intakes, which are the standardized documenting when you take someone on to service, is quite lengthy, because it's similar to a nursing evaluation. It goes through it's a whole systems evaluation, so that can be lengthy. But once you get used to it, it's not too bad. If you have, usually what we've experienced is the home health agency saying a therapist should only get about 1 to 2 of those a week. So you learn to, just get through those few times that you have those. Unfortunately, when, at times it has been a little bit more than that out of, just the circumstances. And those weeks, I will be honest, sometimes they are kind of rough when you feel like all you're doing is documenting.
Mm-hmm.
They're fewer than often that you're having those type of weeks, I think. And
well, that's just a good question. If you are interviewing for a home health travel rotation, that would be one of the first questions I would ask is, are PTs doing starts of care? So that's that OASIS documentation. If there are nurses and PTs and a doctor orders a nurse, the nurse is then required to do the start of care because it is a little bit more nursing based. But if it's just a PT only referral, then the PT would be doing that start of care. So that's a question that I ask now, knowing that those starts of care visits for me on average take about an hour to an hour and a half in the home, and then maybe another hour outside of the home documenting. And that's kind of what I've heard from experienced PTs as well. It takes about that much time. So that's a good question to ask. Am I going to be doing a start of care every day? How many a week? And that helps make the decision of
if you feel that their expected patients that you should be seeing is realistic. If you're doing starts of care every day, 6 patients may be somewhat unrealistic to finish in an 8-hour workday, depending on the mileage you drive. But if you're only 1 or 2 a week, those daily treatments, you can kind of see more in those days. And if you have a start of care, you may see 1 fewer patient that day because you're going to have about an hour and a half documenting outside of the home.
Yeah. So with the starts of care, the time it takes to complete them has significantly gone down for the both of us from our first one that we did about 10 months ago to now. It does, you learn the ins and outs of it, and it's not so bad once you get the hang of it. And as long as the agency is willing to train someone in the OASIS documentation, then it's not as bad as everyone makes it seem.
Correct. Okay. I think that's one of the biggest things is if you get proper training in it, it significantly increases how fast you're able to complete it. If you don't have proper training, it can be grueling.
Got it. And then I guess we were kind of talking about it a little bit, but what is the typical productivity for a home health assignment? You can either talk about that daily or per week.
And this is our second one. And then we also had a friend who interviewed for home health, and I'm typically hearing about 25 a week. So about 5 a day. A lot of places will give you points per visit, and the agency we work for now also gives you points per your mileage. So if you drive more than 50 miles in a day, you get half a point. So that being said, if you drive 50 miles on Monday, 50 miles on Tuesday, on Friday, then as long as you see 4 patients, then you're still at productivity. So typically heard that 25 number frequently. Sometimes you're expected to see more. The most I've heard in a day is about 6. And then the least I've heard is anywhere from 4 to 6 a day. And then on the days where you're not seeing evals and starts of care, then maybe you're seeing 6 treats. But generally about 5 a day.
Yeah, I think 5 a day is pretty standard. You just have to, so usually you'll hear that off the bat from most companies that are, trying to get you to come work for them. But often that's where you got to kind of start asking those questions about how many intakes are you going to be doing a week and the mileage, because those are the things that make those 5 visits doable.
And I have heard our company now counts every visit as 1 point. And typically I'm not working more than 40 hours and I'm able to manage the 25 points without a problem. But I have heard other agencies that will count a start of care as two points and then a regular visit as 1. So that's a good question to ask if they're weighted differently. I know our company actually is in the process right now of weighting the visits differently because that's a lot of feedback they've gotten from their full-time staff. So I think maybe even before the time we leave, the starts of care will be given more value. But typically it ebbs and flows. Some weeks are a little bit busier, some are a little bit slower. So it hasn't really been an issue with us going over hours, and we're meeting the productivity without a problem.
I had a unique productivity set up in Arizona because I was working an hour away from where we were living, and they were happy to get the both of us. So part of what the construct of my contract was that my commute was included in my 8-hour workday, because we were living in the town she was working in, so she had the normal contract, but my 2 hours of the day for my commute were part of my work day, so that I was able to I was truly only working seeing patients for 6 hours a day. So I was only expected to see, I think, 4 patients a day.
Okay. Got it. Very, very cool. Thank you for that. That's super helpful. That's been something I've been considering. At first I set off and I was like, oh, I'm just going to do outpatient. But I've been recently encouraged to check out home health. Yeah, go ahead.
As a traveler, I have really liked working in home health because this has been our second agency that has allowed us to really build our own schedules. So what that means is if I'm working 40 hours in the week, if I want to front load my week and work 9 hours, then I can shave off those extra 3 hours on Friday. So especially when we were living in Arizona, that made us more able to take road trips to California, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico. So that's kind of what we did. That's kind of our personality. I would rather work the long days at the beginning of the week and get out a little early on Friday to make most of that 3-day weekend. And here we've been given that opportunity as well. So as a traveler, I think it really does allow you to see the area very well. And it's kind of an added bonus that during the day you're driving and exploring a new area. So it's kind of, you get to sightsee in the middle. Right now, getting to see, the leaves changing in the Northeast, and it's just something, different that we're not getting as much of in New Jersey where we're from. So it's nice.
And and I'm into photography, so instead of sitting in an office all day, if I'm driving, I can pull over if I see something cool and I can take a picture. I've documented some moose up here, so it's actually pretty neat to be able to drive and you see things that might trigger your interest to go explore more on the weekend. So I think instead of, if you love your PT, obviously you want to be at work, but there's something to be said about, you're getting to, you're not living for the weekend. You're seeing where you're living every single day rather than being in this all day and then going out crazy on the weekend. You're always driving around seeing the area.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's very cool. Kind of stopping and taking photos and sprinkling in your hobbies here and there. So you guys are about a year in. What is something that you know now that you wish you would have known starting out?
Well, I can definitely answer that. So I was, the one thing that recruiters told me one after the next had told me is, being a new grad, you're at a slight disadvantage with getting placed because that's an extra liability the company is taking on, it's your first job. You're going to expect to have a little bit more mentorship. So they did warn me on that, but there was the other piece of there being 2 of us and having to find the 2 jobs at once. But I didn't realize that how long it was going to take to get my first position. So it took us about a month when we really were interviewing and then trying to get the 2 jobs at the same time. I was fortunate enough, I was working as a waitress at that time, but I was not working as a therapist for about a month, and it was getting very frustrating. I spoke with multiple companies, and they would say, we really like you, but you're a new grad and we want someone with more experience. So I actually had considered taking a job for about a year first and then going out again and applying. It just so worked out that, our final interview that we took, we wound up getting the offers in Arizona. So everything worked out. But if knowing people who are still in PT programs, I would probably recommend having at least a year of experience, because then when you go apply for your travel job, you're not waiting, 4 or 6 weeks to get your first acceptance, because, we all have loans. So it was hard to be waiting on a job, and to the point where I thought, I didn't know if it was the best idea and I was going to get a full-time start. So that's one thing that
that was also related to there being 2 of us, so it was a little bit more difficult. I'm sure a new grad by themselves would find an easier time getting a position than it was hard for her. It was a little bit trickier than we thought at having a new grad with having 2 people to find 2 jobs in the same spot.
Yeah, and it was definitely more the new grad piece, because once we had the experience in Arizona finding our job in Maine, we interviewed in one day and we had offers and had accepted by the end of the afternoon. So once you have experience, the process goes so much quicker and a little bit more seamless. But, in my situation, I was able to still be working while I was in the application process. So I made it work for me. But I don't want people to get discouraged if you get a couple of rejections right off the bat.
I'll keep my answer to that question brief. The one, because I do have like 5 different answers, but the one thing I would say that I wish I knew when I started, that I didn't know when I started, that I know now, is how great of a position home health is.
Yeah,
I think it's a really cool, rewarding, part of physical therapy that I didn't really know fully in school. I don't know.
And I just think that, another setting that I have never found myself really wanting to work in is skilled nursing, which also happens to be a large number of travel openings tend to be skilled nursing or home health. But after working in home health, I think I would like to work in skilled nursing, because I've worked in outpatient, I've worked in acute care. So I kind of think it would be really cool to see all the different aspects of PT, and then I will really know where I think I'll fit best when I do decide to settle down.
Got it. Yeah, a lot of options to do as PT and new grads and different ways to take things. Very exciting. So I'm imagining like a PT out there in school right now listening to this, thinking like, oh, there's this like cute couple traveling around, they're doing my dream, like this is them. We've kind of talked about how tough it is to find that initial job. What's been one of the surprising benefits of traveling with your partner?
I mean, I think I'll answer it. I think that, especially in home health, because, you do have coworkers, but you're working remotely and you're only seeing your coworkers maybe once a week. It is, more challenging to meet people in new areas. So you really rely a lot on each other, and it's been great because we use the same documentation system. So we're able to teach each other new things almost, and we've been at this job for 3 months and we're still, showing each other new things. So it definitely, I feel like, has brought us closer together, because you're in a new situation and you're learning really quickly and you have to adapt really quickly. And we're both in the same situation. So I think it's been good in that aspect.
I think the best part of having someone else is it is the first couple weeks at a new position can seem overwhelming. And I think having someone else, keeps you from breaking a little bit. And I think I've learned that just with these 2, that it really always works out. So, I mean, obviously if there's an extenuating circumstance, but having someone else to kind of lean on helps you get through the first 2 weeks where you're like, what I get myself into, you're just getting used to the nuances of the position. And because every agency is a little different that you're going to work for, but having, and also outside of work, going to a new area, it gives you someone to, find new activities that you weren't necessarily had ever done, and kind of forcing you to try new things. Since I grew up skiing, but Tori isn't your best gear. But we live on the side of a mountain. If you could see out the window, it's not even. It's about a 3/4 of a mile is the lift up to the slope. So hopefully she'll be able to get up there and ski a little bit this winter.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Plus we got the dogs also.
You guys must be pretty outdoorsy then with all your travels, hiking.
It definitely has made us, we always enjoy the outdoors, but being in Sedona is, red rocks, and, we spent every day we did a hike or did something outside, and especially we have the dogs, so we have to take them with us. And here we're doing kayaking, more water sports, hopefully some skiing. So it's really cool just to talk to your patients and see what they like. Gives us most of our recommendations, I would say. They'll tell you which trails are good, and it's just really trying to make the most out of a short time in one place. You don't know when you'll be back. So we really, every day, even work days after work, we try to do something to really, immerse ourselves in the area, really appreciate it, make the most out of it.
Yeah, one of the coolest things is you look up an area and you see all these ideas of must do things, and then you get out there and you're working there. It's just a much different experience because you meet these local people that have spent the good part of their lives there mostly, and their recommendations aren't these things that you've read about, and then you do them, and it's so incredible that you're finding things that aren't the tourist traps, and you're really getting to experience the culture and these hidden places, especially out in Arizona, but also here in Maine. And then when your friends come and visit you, because we have had a lot of visitors in both places because we've had a place to stay that they may have never had the chance to get out to. And we've been showing them these places that they couldn't believe, existed. And there was, it was really awesome.
Yeah. Do you guys have a favorite travel story?
With a patient or?
Yeah. Oh, no, I have one. You feel great. Okay, so.
I got a lot.
Okay, so in Arizona, we had our separate territories, but then they started transitioning Devin closer to my office, so then I had to start giving him some of my caseload to start him off. And there was one patient that I was seeing, and it was a woman, and her husband built model aircrafts, and he had an airstrip in his backyard. And me, I'm more of the timid of the two. He said to me, when you're done treating my wife, I would really like to take you and your boyfriend up in my plane. And it was a plane he had built from an Oldsmobile engine out of a car. He built into an airplane. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure.
It sounds terrifying.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. But I'm thinking, heck no. Then I wound up transferring his wife to Devin. And, of course, Devin comes home and he goes, we're going up in an airplane on Sunday. So here we are. Oh, man. It was definitely a leap of faith. But I was thinking, when else am I going to be able to fly in an airplane over Sedona, which is one of the most beautiful places in the United States. And they charge people like $500 to do something like that.
20 minutes in a helicopter.
Yeah, so he took us up, and we flew for several hours, probably about 3 hours, and he flew us to another airstrip a few towns away, and then we had breakfast with all the pilots there. And then on the way back, he had 2 wheels in the front, so you could try flying the plane. So he put his hands behind his head like this, and he told me, he said, okay, now it's your turn. So I got to fly his homemade airplane over and while I was in the air, I can remember thinking, like, wow, traveling was the best decision I've ever made.
It sounds scary, but it was actually, I'm quite the gentleman. I didn't tell her this till after the fact, but after I treated her one day, I had a little bit of a slower day, so I went up in the plane, just me and him, before I took Tori up there to make sure it was safe. So I went up in twice.
We got to go twice, so I knew it was okay. But
when he said it was made out of a car engine, I said, I think I should go up in this thing first.
And we didn't tell our parents about it until we had landed back where we started. So, but it was really the coolest things I've ever done in my life, and I would have never even been in that situation. Because one of the things is, we're doing home care. I'm driving around my car with my New Jersey license plate. So all of my patients, the first thing they say is, "You're from New Jersey. What are you doing here?" So I feel like patients, when they know you're not from an area, they go above and beyond to help you appreciate the area, doing things like that. A lot of our patients here give us crops out of a lot of farmers here giving us their crops they grow right on their property. So everyone really wants you to feel at home, and they want you to really appreciate the culture. So that's another thing that I think traveling gives you a different perspective, because people are really wanting to share the area with you because they love it so much.
Got it. That is a really cool story.
I'd say that's
I know. When I thought of that, I said, I know he'll like this one.
a good story.
Do you guys have something that you have bought that you have to have when you travel to these new places? Like a phone app that helps you on your travels, or like an item, anything?
Well, I'll give a shout out to the app Waze. That's a really good app. That helped us because we did go home once to New Jersey, and you have to go right through New York City. And the Waze app really helped us avoid, when we went down to New Jersey, we just used the traditional GPS, and it took us way longer than it normally does. And then on the way back up, we used the Waze app, and we shaved off almost 2 hours from the drive. Wow. I also, right before traveling, bought a Jeep Wrangler. It was always a car that I always wanted to have. It was my dream car. And it was definitely not the most smartest option for gas efficiency, but I'm glad that we have it, because we were able to really use it, especially in Arizona. There was a lot of, off-roading hikes you couldn't get to without a high clearance vehicle. So, not everyone can buy a new car when they go to travel. It just so happened that I needed a new car, so that's what I chose, but it's been really cool having it. He has got a Subaru. I would recommend it. It depends where you're going, but, we went from northern Arizona, which does get snow, which you may not believe, to Maine with snow. So definitely, if you plan on traveling to colder climates, having a car that can handle the elements.
Yeah, I bought a roof rack, and so we can take our kayaks with us. Another thing that was good, that we've invested in a lot of camping gear, because you're going to end up in these rural places. You want to get out and do a lot of camping. Right.
And we try to travel on the weekends a lot, within an hour or two. So if you're traveling every weekend, that's fun on hotels. So camping, it's a lot of fun. We have our dogs with us, and it's fun, and it's inexpensive. So you're able to go more places and not have to worry about the cost. And you can camp anywhere. You just we get in the car with the tent, and we say, we'll find something, and we always do.
You mentioned the all-terrain vehicle, and one of the trips that I made right before I graduated was with a friend of mine, and we went to Colorado. And I had never been hiking before, like serious hiking, and he had never been camping before. So we made this decision on a Sunday that we were going to go out and, just go off each other's knowledge and make this trip. And so we left on a Tuesday, that next Tuesday, and a series of hilarious and funny stories happened after that. But one of the mountains that we went up, we didn't have, our rental vehicle couldn't make it up the terrain. So we had to start at a much sooner point than all the other hikers. And it ended up being like 2 miles extra. So we had to walk up this switchback that you would usually drive a car up. And then we did the hike. I ended up losing the tread on my shoe. Almost fell off the mountain a couple of times, sliding down. And then it was just the longest walk back, those last 2 miles, when everybody else got to sit in their vehicles and get their snacks, and we were just trudging along.
We've driven by people in the same situation, and I always feel bad. If there's room in the car, we'll have but sometimes we don't have any, but I've seen it, so I believe.
Gotcha. Are there any books or podcasts or personalities that you guys follow that has kind of helped you on your journey? Could be travel related, could be just of what your interests are.
She does a lot of reading. I mostly, I will say that what I typically, I'm very into photography, so I kind of like following a lot of traveling photographers and kind of seeing areas they've been to and getting ideas for things I want to do in an area I am, or places that I want to go to in the future. I'm not an avid reader.
Well, the books I read are more just out of entertainment. There's a local bookshop by our house here, which is cool. They have a section of main author books. So little things like that, if you can find books to help you appreciate the culture of the area. But as far as like social media or anything like that, I sometimes will use the hashtag TravelPT on my photos. And I find it a lot of fun to click on the hashtag and see other PTs, and then I'll follow them, and it's pretty neat. And then right now there's another traveler working out of the same office as me, so that we instantly hit it off. We met and we sat and we talked together, and one of our managers said, "Oh, how long have you guys known each other?" And we said, "We just met." But you know, traveling, you're putting yourself out there, so when you meet another traveler, you just want to share stories and experiences. And you know, she wants to go to Arizona now, and she told us about Oregon, and we want to go to Oregon. So just if you are in an office with other travelers, that would be my favorite part of traveling. Is it's not a large, it is a large community, but when you're able to meet someone, you realize that it's a small community. Not that many people are out there doing this and traveling. So that's one of my favorite things, is just seeing what other travelers are doing on Instagram, and you know, then meeting them, and then you know, we'll still be connected when we go our separate ways, and get to see how she does in Arizona, and she'll get to see how we're doing in Oregon. So that's been really cool. It's a friend, you know, you'll have for.
Evan, you mentioned that you were following people, you were following photographers. Is there one in particular or a couple that you follow that you're all about?
Well, I mean, a lot of photographers that are into the outdoors will reference Chris Burkhardt, but he's really famous. But actually, I'll give a shout out to my friend who's also who's also a traveling physical therapist. So I actually follow him. He's been to all over California and some other places. I'm not sure where he actually is right now. I haven't talked to him in a few weeks. But he's Adventure Russ, ADVENTURUSS _PT, and he's real into photography as well. And he went through our school at Stockton, and he was able to. I followed his account, and we actually met up with him in Arizona. He trekked out from California just to stay with us for a weekend in Sedona, and he educated me on some photography techniques that I didn't know. The astrophotography, taking photos of space with the Milky Way.
Yeah. Because
he was living out by Joshua Tree out there, and he was in a very remote area where there wasn't much to do. So after work, he pretty much mastered how to do the astrophotography and he came out to Arizona and taught me how to do that.
That is really cool.
Yeah. And if his account has some really, really excellent photos on there.
Okay.
So a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, I'll be sure to plug them in the show notes down below. And I'm a big space nerd. I think
Yeah.
Yep, I got a space note right here on astrophysics, but I'll be sure to follow him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again another. It just goes to show you can really make lasting friendships just from being in the field. And you know, it's how we met you, is just, you know, social media and travel PT and our friend Russ. We all went to the same program, but you know, we were in different ages, so we were never that close. And when we met up with him, it was like we had known him for years. So that's really cool. it's a cool community to be a part of.
Yeah, Russ was, I think, 2 years ahead of me in the program at our school, and I knew him from undergrad. He's an avid fitness guy, so we spent a lot of time in the gym just bumping into each other, but we never really developed a friendship. But then we kept in contact, and I noticed he was doing travel, and I reached out to him just with a couple questions, and he ended up driving all the way from California, not knowing me too much. And we actually had already had guests staying that week. And I said, I'm sorry, man, I got guests. I don't have a bed. And this kid came all the way out, slept on my floor for 3 days and hiked with us. And now I feel like we're like best friends.
So it's pretty neat. And, if you ever find yourself in Maine or wherever we are, it's great to meet people with similar interests, other therapists, other travelers. So it's really cool.
Absolutely. Travel meetups. They need to start happening more often.
We embrace that. With people.
What would you tell a couple out there, maybe who just graduated PT school? We're kind of in the similar situation where you were having trouble, finding that first position. What would you tell a new travel PT couple if they were on the fence on whether or not travel was for them?
Is this if they're having trouble for a position, or they just aren't sure if they want to do travel?
More the latter. They're just not sure if they want to do travel.
I would say it takes someone that is willing to leave their comfort zone, but I have found it to be the most rewarding experience and something that I'm grateful that I have a profession where I'm able to do this, because patients remind me every single day how fortunate I am to be able to do this. So if I ever get stressed and I start to forget, it only takes driving to the next patient's house to be told how cool it is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and you meet so many people, and especially, we're obviously young on the beginning end of the profession, and I've met a lot of travelers kind of on the opposite end of the profession. Instead of retiring, they're starting to travel. And they always say, you guys are doing it right. I wish I would have done this when I was young. But I always say to him, we'll do it now and then ultimately settle down somewhere. But I would love to do it on the other end as well. So I really like that you just take it one contract at a time. You can go as long as you want, and then you can stop whenever you want. So I would tell any physical therapist or any health professional, I would say I would recommend it to anyone. I just think that it makes you such a better professional, and you learn so much about different cultures of people.
I would say, while you're young, you should take advantage of the opportunity, because not every profession is granted the ability to do something like this. And there's always time to go home and climb the ranks if you have management aspirations and things like that. But with travel, if you put yourself out there and are willing to work in different settings and whatnot, you'll be surprised how quickly you grow as a professional and how quickly you're able to adapt to stressful and different situations that are totally out of your comfort zone. And I was, more on the type A side, and this has made me able to, I think, I'm a little bit more easygoing, and I don't take things, not that I don't take them seriously, but I feel like I'm able to brush things off a little bit and just keep moving forward and turn stressful things into a positive. And I think when I stop traveling and settle down for a full-time position somewhere, that I will be able to really easily transition into any kind of setting, because the good and the bad experiences are only making you a better professional.
Got it.
And person, and for that matter.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you guys so much for sitting down and giving us a view of what a young relationship traveler would look like. Did you have any other words that you wanted to tell the listeners?
If you're on the fence, do it, and good luck.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, wait, our dog has an Instagram. He's traveling _GSP, which stands for German Short Hair Pointer. He's got more followers than me and him combined. But we do cool hikes so we can take cool pictures of our dog. So give him a follow.
All right. I'll put him in the show notes as well. Well, thank you so much, guys. I'm going to add you to the private group that we have going on, New Medical Nomads. It's just a group for people to kind of shoot out questions if they have any. And that way they can also tag you if they want to ask any questions of photography or about the Waze app or about your dog.
Yeah.
And then for the listeners, if you're looking for the next launch for the episode, you can find those at the New Medical Nomads podcast Facebook page, or you can find us on YouTube as well. And usually the videos are uploaded about a week to 2 weeks earlier than the official launch. But we're also on iTunes. We're also on Stitcher. If you could give us a like, give us a share, show us some love, that'll get our message out, and we would greatly appreciate it. But I greatly appreciate you, Tori and Devin. Thank you so much for sitting down and responding to my Instagram message. But
thank you, Dylan. It was fun.
All right, I'll move on so quickly.
All right. Well, you guys have a good night and safe travels.
You too. Thanks. Good luck.
Thanks. And we'll start recording there.